Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today is very specific, really laser focused. We're prepping you, our listener, for a high stakes behavioral interview,
That's right.
specifically for a technical account manager role, a TAMP at the trade desk, TTD. This isn't just, a resume polish.
No, no,
It's
no.
about mastering how you tell your story strategically
hmm
and showing you're completely fluent in TTD's latest big strategic moves.
Exactly. Because look, by the time you get to the behavioral rounds, they pretty much assume you've got the technical chops, right?
Right, that's table stakes.
The real test, and honestly, your best shot to really stand out, is how you talk about your past experiences, the challenges, the wins. So we've got two big things on the agenda today.
Okay.
First, we're ditching the old STAR method. It's tired. We're replacing it with something much better, more strategic, the SPSIL framework.
SESIL. Right.
And second, we're going deep into TTD's market strategy, especially around their new platform, Kokai, and all the buzz, the debates around identity and supply paths right now.
So think of this deep dive as your custom blueprint. It's meant to be practical, something you can actually use.
Absolutely. Actionable.
We're helping you organize your personal stories, make sure your achievements land with maximum impact, and basically walk into that interview speaking the language of enterprise programmatic strategy. So let's start right there with the foundation, telling a better story. Okay, so everyone knows STAR, right? Situation, task, action, result. It's been the go-to for ages.
Deeds, yeah.
But frankly, for these kinds of senior high-stakes roles, it feels a bit thin sometimes. Let's introduce SPSIL properly. What are those 5 letters, and why is it actually a better fit for an experienced candidate?
Okay, so SPSIL stands for Situation, Problem, Solution, Impact, and Lessons. The whole structure, it's designed to cut through ambiguity and, crucially, force you into some strategic reflection.
Ah, okay.
See, the old STAR model, it has a couple of big flaws we're trying to fix here. First, people always get tangled up distinguishing task from action.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that. My task
Yeah.
was to do the thing.
Exactly. It feels redundant, like my task was to deliver the project. Well, yeah, it just adds noise. SPSIL gets rid of that confusion by swapping task and action for a really clear problem statement, followed by a detailed solution.
So instead of burning time explaining what someone told you to do, you jump straight into the challenge itself, the complexity, and then how you responded creatively.
Precisely. You focus on the why and the how, but the second thing, and honestly, this is the game changer, is the mandatory THEL, the lessons step.
Right, the lessons learned.
Yeah. STAR just stops at result. SPSIL makes you articulate what you learned. For a senior client-facing role like a TAM, the interviewer isn't just looking for someone who executed tasks. They want someone who reflects, grows, and can apply that learning systemically to the next problem.
Okay, that makes sense.
The impact that tells them what you achieved, maybe a number. The lessons tell them how you evolved as a professional. How did that experience change how you approach clients or maybe even internal processes?
So that fifth element, lessons, that's really the jump from sounding like just a doer to sounding like a strategic thinker, a leader even.
Exactly. It shows self-awareness, critical thinking. Both are absolutely vital when you're managing huge enterprise clients, complex integrations.
You're showing you can learn from success, but also, maybe more importantly, from failure or near misses.
That's it. You're not just the tech person who fixed a bug. You're the person who understood why the bug happened in the system or the process and figured out how to prevent it from happening again, maybe across the whole client portfolio. That's strategic value.
Okay, got it. So SPSIL forces that strategic layer. Right. Now let's talk about delivery under pressure. You're in the interview, you get the question,
Yeah.
it's easy to ramble. You mentioned 3 anchor points: outcome, action, impact. How does that mental checklist help keep you focused?
Right. This is like your emergency toolkit when the pressure's on. When you hear that behavioral question, like, tell me about a time, mentally, the first thing you do is anchor on the client's outcome. What was the business goal they were trying to hit?
Start with the why for the client.
Yes. Don't start with the technical weeds. So instead of jumping into, well, we had this issue with our GraphQL API, you start with something like, the client was really struggling to get real-time budget optimization working effectively across their global campaigns. See the difference?
Yeah, immediately frames it in terms of business value. That's definitely TTD's language.
Exactly. Then from there, you transition smoothly to defining your action and taking ownership. Use I. So I led a cross-functional task force, or I designed the new data schema. Make it crystal clear what you did, not just the team.
Avoid the passive we.
Definitely. And the final anchor is the impact. Make it quantifiable if you possibly can. Crisp, clear, A percentage, a dollar figure, save time. This reduced client onboarding time by 30%, or ultimately, this feature drove 18% year-over-year revenue growth for them. Something memorable that sticks.
So, outcome, my action, quantifiable impact. That structure stops you from meandering for 5 minutes before you actually get to the point.
It disciplines your answer, keeps it tight and impactful.
Okay, now let's layer on some essential rules for delivery that kind of underpin this SPSIL structure. You mentioned a few key ones.
Yeah, 3 main rules. Rule number 1, time management. This is probably the single biggest mistake people make.
Spending too long on the setup.
Exactly. They spend like 70% of their answer explaining the situation and the problem. You've got to practice getting that context, the S and the P, out in, say, 30 to 45 seconds, tops.
Wow, that's quick.
It has to be. The real meat, the value for the interviewer is in your innovative solution, and especially those strategic lessons learned. That's where you should spend the bulk of your time.
Okay, discipline on the setup. Rule 2.
We touched on it, but it's worth hammering home. Ownership. Focus relentlessly on your specific contribution. Use I. If you keep saying the team did this, the team did that, the interviewer is left wondering, okay, but what did you actually do? You're there to sell yourself, your skills.
Right, be the protagonist of your own story.
Couldn't say it better. And rule number 3, this is where the really strategic candidates shine. Versatility.
Meaning you don't need a million different stories.
Exactly. Don't stress about having 50 unique examples. You need maybe, say, 7 to 10 really strong, well-polished SPSIL stories that you know inside and out. The trick is practicing how to adapt them, how to remix and reframe them on the fly.
Ah, so one story could answer multiple types of questions, depending on the angle you take.
Precisely.
No.
A story about adapting to a big industry change, like we'll discuss later, could also be framed as a story about technical rigor, if you focus on the deep troubleshooting involved. Or maybe it's a leadership story if you emphasize how you guided the team. This isn't about just memorizing scripts. It's about mastering your core narratives.
All right, let's get into the core material then.
Yeah.
We've got these 7 specific SPSIL stories that seem really well tailored for TAM role at TTD. They hit on those key themes: scale, enabling clients, technical integrity.
Yeah, and for a TAM, remember, these stories need that blend. They've got to be technically credible, showing you understand the platform and the ecosystem, but always framed strategically connecting the tech back to the client's business outcomes. You're the bridge.
Okay, let's start with story 1. Improving cross-functional intake. Sounds like an internal process story.
It is, and it's crucial because internal friction kills client experience. So, the situation. Yes, the company was scaling super fast, lots of new hires. The problem, internal teams, like sales or client success, were booking technical demos or deep dive sessions with the TAMs or solutions architects without providing any of the essential background info.
Like what?
Like, what's the client's current identity setup? Are their creative assets even compliant with the platform specs? Basic stuff, but critical. This lack of context meant something like 40% of these initial meetings were kind of a waste of time or needed tons of follow-up just to get the basics. Super inefficient.
Okay, so what was the solution?
It was proactive. I realized this wasn't sustainable, so I worked with the admin for our internal ticketing system, Zendesk in this case. We redesigned the intake forms for requesting technical support or demos. We added required fields, conditional logic, basically guided the requester to provide the specific info the technical team needed up front.
Smart, making the process enforce the requirements.
Exactly. And the impact was almost immediate. We saw about a 90% rate of new tickets coming in with genuinely actionable context right from the start. And those follow-up demo requests, they dropped by 40%.
Wow. And the crucial lesson, L here.
The strategic takeaway is twofold. First, great client experiences often start with smoothing out your internal operations. Fix the inside first. Second, sometimes the most powerful technical solution isn't writing code, it's designing better operational processes that ensure data integrity from the get-go.
Love that. Okay, let's go deeper on story 2. Dynamic creative optimization for out-of-home. DCOOH. This sounds technically complex.
It is, and it's a great example of technical innovation under some really tough constraints. So, situation is, we were launching a major dynamic creative campaign for a big out-of-home media client. Think digital billboards, screens, and transit systems, that kind of thing. And this was specifically in the Asia-Pacific region, APAC.
Okay.
The problem was very specific and very challenging. The physical locations of these screens, often in subways, remote bus shelters, had incredibly low and worse intermittent bandwidth, really patchy connectivity.
Oh, that's a killer for dynamic content.
Absolutely. The whole point of the platform was pulling real-time data for personalization, local weather, time of day, special offers. But the poor network performance meant the video ads, the core creative, would often fail to load in time. They'd fall back to a default static image.
Which completely negates the value proposition of dynamic, right?
Totally. The client promise was geo-targeted, dynamic, relevant ads, and we were delivering static backups. Not good. And you can't just magically upgrade the network infrastructure in a city subway system.
Right. The constraint was physical. So what was the clever solution?
Let's have
This is where the innovation comes in.
The core idea, developed in partnership with our solutions engineering team, was a multi-session caching protocol. Instead of trying to download the entire personalized creative package over that weak link right before playback,
Which was failing.
we designed logic to do it in stages. During off-peak hours, when network load was lower, the system would pre-cache the large static base files, the main video, the background images, onto the local device at the screen location.
Get the heavy lifting done ahead of time.
Exactly. Then, much closer to the actual ad playback time, we only needed the minimal bandwidth available to pull down the small, lightweight dynamic data overlays. Things like the current price point, the specific localized offer text, the geotag update. These are tiny data packets compared to the video file.
That's really smart. Separating the static bulk from the dynamic details.
It massively reduced the data payload needed during that critical time-sensitive playback window. And the impact, it worked beautifully. The campaign was a success. The client saw an 18% year-over-year revenue growth attributed to it. But bigger than that.
It became part of the platform.
Yes, that multi-session caching logic was productized. It became a standard feature in our platform's library, specifically for deploying campaigns in any low-bandwidth environment. The lesson Al learned here was powerful. Constraints often force the most creative innovations. And technically, we learned to always design for graceful degradation, prioritizing core functionality even when connectivity is poor, rather than just hoping for brute force connection.
Fantastic example. Okay, let's jump to story 4, root cause analysis of tracking discrepancies. You mentioned this showcases leading without formal authority.
Right. This one is all about technical governance and bridging gaps. The situation S. A major client, a big programmatic buyer, started seeing wild swings in their reporting. Huge discrepancies, sometimes over 15%, between the conversions we were reporting in our platform and the actual post-click tracking happening on their website. Unacceptable variance.
15% is massive. That kills trust.
Instantly. And the problem was that it was really insidious. You had at least 4 different teams involved. Our internal engineering, the third-party creative vendors building the ads, the client's own analytics team managing their site tracking, and our client success team trying to mediate. Everyone was pointing fingers.
The classic blame game. It's not our system, it's theirs.
Exactly. Nobody could pinpoint where the failure was actually happening. So I decided we needed a formal root cause analysis, an RCA, and I volunteered to lead it, coordinating across all those groups.
So you stepped up. What did the deep dive uncover that everyone else was missing?
It turned out the issue wasn't really in any single system, but in the gap between them. A technical mismatch in expectations. Our external creative API, which dynamically inserted tracking pixels into the ads, was designed around an older, simpler tracking method. Let's call it Method A. But the client's internal tracking library on their website, it had been updated to only support a newer, more complex Method B.
Different languages, basically.
Pretty much. Method B needed a bunch of complex manual field setups within the ad tag that our API just wasn't built to handle automatically. And the kicker, the original documentation we had provided was outdated, so everyone assumed the systems were compatible.
So the problem wasn't necessarily bad code, but a failure in the integration handshake and outdated docs. What was the solution S then, if you couldn't just rewrite both systems overnight?
Pragmatism was key. Since immediate code changes were off the table, the solution was documentation, but highly targeted documentation. I authored 2 distinct, comprehensive implementation guides. One was a simplified guide for the creative agencies, showing them exactly how to set up tags using the older compatible Method A. The second guide was highly technical, aimed at the client's engineers, detailing precisely how to configure their system for Method B when receiving our tags, including known workarounds for the API limitations.
So you bridge the gap with clear, role-specific instructions.
Exactly. And the impact was dramatic. Within 2 months, the volume of support tickets related to tracking discrepancies dropped by over 90%. 90%.
Incredible. And the strategic lesson L.
The big lesson is that critical risks often hide in the gaps between teams and systems, not just within the code itself. And secondly, proactive, clear, role-specific documentation isn't just nice to have, it's a crucial strategic tool for preventing operational failure and ensuring smooth integrations.
That's a brilliant story for a TAM role. Okay, let's quickly hit the core value and lesson for the remaining few. Story 5, navigating knowledge silos. What's the gist?
Right, the problem here was a classic one. A single key engineer was basically hoarding crucial documentation for a critical but older tag container system, a single point of failure. The solution wasn't about confronting the individual directly, but about escalating the platform risk to management, highlighting the danger of that knowledge silo. This forced a mandatory documentation initiative across the team.
Makes sense. The lesson.
The lesson is fundamental. True technical excellence isn't just about being smart, it's about enablement. Knowledge sharing has to be part of the culture, foundational, not just optional or dependent on one person.
Okay. Story 6, adapting to industry change. Flash to HTML5. A big one.
Huge. The problem was industry-wide panic when Adobe announced Flash deprecation. Clients faced having potentially thousands of creative assets become obsolete overnight. The solution involved me taking a lead role in managing our platform's transition support for clients, but also going beyond that, actively contributing to industry bodies, like the IAB Tech Labs working group that developed the HTML5 Best Practices Guide 2.0.
So contributing to the new standard.
Right. The impact was that over 95% of our clients transitioned smoothly, with minimal disruption, and the lesson. Major industry shifts like that, if you manage them proactively and help shape the path forward, they actually become massive opportunities to build trust with your clients. You turn panic into partnership.
Excellent. And lastly, story 7, tailoring communication, U.S. Army VAST migration. This one's about feedback, you said.
Absolutely. The situation was a project migrating the U.S. Army's video ad campaigns to a new VST template standard. The problem was actually my initial approach. I overwhelmed the Army's marketing team, who were smart but not deeply technical, with these incredibly dense, detailed technical manuals. I assumed more detail equaled more clarity.
Common mistake.
Totally. The turning point was direct client feedback. They basically said, look, this is too much. We trust you guys. Just tell us exactly what video assets and logos to send you, and you handle the technical VST stuff. That feedback was the solution trigger.
Ah, so the client told you what they needed.
Directly. So the refined solution was to create 2 distinct support paths. Path 1, a detailed self-serve guide for clients who are technical and wanted control. Path 2, a simplified white glove service where non-technical clients just sent us the raw assets and we handled the technical formatting.
Tailoring the service level.
Exactly. The impact. It cut the onboarding and migration time for those non-technical teams by 40%. The huge lesson for me personally, and for any TAM, is always match your communication style and depth to your audience's actual needs and technical comfort level. Your primary job is friction removal.
Okay, this is where the practice really pays off. We've got these 7 rich, detailed SP-style narratives. Now we need to show how you, the listener, can strategically deploy them to answer those common, sometimes tricky behavioral questions. You're showing the interviewer you can think on your feet.
Exactly. This is about moving beyond just having the stories to mastering their application. Remember, the interviewer isn't just asking about leadership. They're looking for evidence of specific competencies demonstrated through your story.
All right, let's start with a classic. Tell me about a time you led a team or showed leadership. What story fits and why?
Okay, the competency they're probing for here is often influence without direct authority, especially for a TAM role where you coordinate a lot. So the immediate go-to should be story 4, the tracking discrepancy, RCA.
Why that one specifically?
Because you weren't anyone's boss in that scenario, right? You identified a critical systemic failure that was impacting a major client. And then, crucially, you took the initiative to drive a cross-functional investigation. You had to coordinate with engineering, with client success, with external vendors, maybe even the client's tech team. You owned the problem and drove towards a solution, publishing the documentation yourself when engineering resources were stretched thin. That's demonstrating real operational leadership that goes beyond your formal job description.
Perfect. Okay, next question. Tell me about a time you adapted well to change.
This one's testing your proactive adaptability, especially when faced with significant shifts, not just minor tweaks. The absolute perfect match here is story 6, the Flash to HTML5 transition.
Obvious choice, maybe.
It is, but it's powerful because you're not just talking about adapting to, say, a new internal software rollout. You're talking about navigating a massive industry-wide obsolescence event. It was seismic. And by highlighting your proactive role contributing to the IAB Tech Lab guidelines, helping define the new standards, you position yourself not just as someone who adapted, but as someone who led through the change, anticipating client needs and fears.
Nice framing. Okay, how about this one? Tell me about a time you faced a hard problem or a really difficult challenge at work.
This is digging into your technical resilience and your deep problem-solving skills. You actually have a couple of excellent options here, depending on the specific flavor of hard problem you want to highlight.
Okay, what are the options?
You could use Story 2, the DCOH low bandwidth issue, if you want to emphasize creative, almost ingenious technical innovation under severe physical constraints. Solving that network limitation with the clever multi-session caching protocol, that shows real software ingenuity.
Right, tackling the impossible.
Exactly. Or you could again use Story 4, the Tracking Discrepancy RCA, if you want to showcase your ability to meticulously debug a really complex multi-system failure, especially one involving organizational friction and bridging those communication gaps. Both stories demonstrate exceptional technical rigor in different ways.
So you choose based on what aspect of problem solving you want to emphasize. Makes sense. Okay, moving to initiative. Tell me about a time you saw a problem and took the initiative to solve it.
Here, they're looking for evidence that you're a proactive self-starter, someone who doesn't just wait to be told what to fix. Story 1. Improving cross-functional intake is ideal for this.
Why? Because it wasn't strictly your job.
Precisely. That systemic inefficiency with the contextless demo requests. Fixing the Zendesk workflow wasn't technically in your core PAM job description. It was a process failure impacting efficiency. By voluntarily taking it upon yourself to diagnose the issue, work with the Zendesk admin, and redesign the forms, you showed pure initiative.
Any other options?
Story 3. The creative taxonomy works well, too. The reporting chaos caused by inconsistent naming conventions across different agencies wasn't your direct fault, but it impacted client reporting and wasted client success time. By proactively designing that unified taxonomy framework, you stepped outside your immediate duties to fix a broader systemic issue. Both show you look for ways to improve things, even if it's not explicitly assigned.
Great examples. Now here's one that can trip people up because it requires more strategic thinking. Describe a time you had to prioritize projects under pressure.
Yes, this isn't just about being busy. This question tests your project management maturity and, crucially, your ability to make defensible, data-driven trade-offs when resources are tight. You absolutely must bring in a recognized prioritization framework here.
Like STAR for storytelling, but a framework for prioritizing.
Exactly. And the best one, widely understood, is RICE. It stands for Reach, Impact, Confidence, and Effort. Your story needs to describe a situation with real pressure, maybe a critical product launch or an upcoming funding round where certain features had to be ready.
Okay, so walk us through how you'd structure the RICE answer quickly.
Sure, you set the scene. We had two critical projects, Project A and Project B, both vying for limited engineering resources and a hard deadline looming because of our Series B funding round. Then you explain how you applied WICE objectively.
So you score them.
Yes. You'd say something like, to make an objective decision, I led an exercise using the RICE framework. We estimated the reach, how many users each project would affect, the impact, how much each would move the needle on key metrics relevant to the funding, our confidence in those estimates, how certain we were. And finally, the effort, how much engineering time each would realistically take.
And then you explain the outcome of that scoring.
Right. The scoring showed that while Project A had decent reach, its impact score was lower, and our confidence in the estimates was frankly shaky. Project B, however, scored highly across the board, particularly on impact, as it directly addressed the two core features our investors were most focused on for the funding round.
And the lesson learned.
The lesson isn't just, we picked Project B, it's strategic. Using the RICE framework allowed us to make a transparent, data-backed decision. It wasn't based on who shouted loudest. This helped us convince senior management, and importantly, it maintained team morale because everyone understood why the prioritization happened the way it did.
That's a fantastic way to elevate a simple prioritization question into a strategic discussion about decision-making. Masterclass. Okay, final common question. Tell me about a time you received a really useful piece of feedback.
This question is all about assessing your self-synchronous, your coachability, and your ability to actually act on feedback. The absolute optimal story here is story 7, the U.S. Army communication mismatch.
Because the feedback was so direct and actionable.
Exactly. That client feedback, just tell us what assets to send you, wasn't vague criticism. It was immediate, clarifying market data. It instantly highlighted your professional blind spot. You were over-engineering the communication for that specific audience's needs.
So you don't frame it as negative criticism, but as useful input.
Precisely. You frame it as a valuable insight that helped you improve. Your lesson learned is explicit. That specific piece of feedback was incredibly useful because it made me realize I wasn't tailoring my approach effectively. It permanently reshaped how I think about audience calibration, leading directly to developing that two-path support model, self-serve versus white glove, which we then applied to other clients. It shows you heard it, understood it, acted on it, and scaled the learning.
Okay, we've absolutely nailed the storytelling part, the structure with SPSIL, the core stories, the versatility, fantastic. Now let's switch gears. You need to walk into that TTD interview sounding completely fluent in their current ecosystem, their strategy, the hot topics. And right now, that conversation has to center around Kokai.
Absolutely. Kokai is everything for TTD right now. It's the future. It's the AI-driven evolution of their entire programmatic platform, the successor to Solimar, and at its heart is the Koa AI engine.
Koa AI.
Right.
What does it actually do?
Think of Koa as analyzing just unbelievable amounts of data in real time. Trillions of data points, the bid stream, signals from UID2, first-party data clients bring in, all crunched by the AI for instant decisioning and bid optimization. TTD is very careful in how they position it, though.
How so?
They consistently call Koa an AI co-pilot. It's designed to augment the human trader, make them smarter and faster, not necessarily replace them entirely. It's about enhancing human capability.
Okay, but we know the launch wasn't perfectly smooth.
Yeah.
You mentioned stock volatility earlier, some initial client pushback. What was the specific friction point there? What caused that early resistance?
Yeah, there was definitely turbulence. The main issue from everything we've seen and heard was the initial complexity of the user interface that launched with Kokai.
The UI itself.
Yes. TTD rolled out this incredibly ambitious, data-rich display internally, sometimes called the programmatic table UI. Imagine this massive matrix showing traders potentially every single optimization lever, every data point, all at once.
Sounds powerful, but maybe overwhelming.
Exactly. It was designed for ultimate transparency and control, but in practice, for many users, it was just too complex. It required a steep learning curve and a lot of manual configuration clicks in an environment where speed is critical. It felt, to some, like TTD had prioritized showing everything over making it easily usable.
So it wasn't necessarily a flaw in the Koa AI brain itself, but more in how the controls and dashboards were presented to the user. That's what spooked the market.
That seems to be the consensus, yes. The AI engine itself was powerful, but the interface created friction. That initial slower-than-expected adoption curve, combined with client feedback about the complexity, definitely contributed to that stock dip we saw in early 2025.
And TTD's response?
To their credit, they reacted pretty quickly. They listened to the feedback, they sunsetted some of the most complex table views, simplified the navigation, and really refocused the UI on making that co-pilot feel more intuitive, more like helpful guidance rather than a demanding instruction manual. So as a TAM candidate, you need to be able to talk about that journey, acknowledge the initial bumps, but frame it as TTD being agile and responsive to client needs.
Got it. Now, thinking specifically about the ecosystem TAM role, the partners, the integrations, how do you demonstrate fluency there in the context of Kokai?
Right. You need to show you understand how external partners actually connect and interact with this new AI-driven platform. So you need to be comfortable talking about the partner portal, which is the main interface for many partners, but also, crucially, the APIs.
APIs are key for integration. Any specifics there?
Yes. You should definitely know that TTD makes heavy use of GraphQL for many of its newer APIs. Mentioning GraphQL specifically shows a deeper level of technical awareness.
Why is GraphQL significant compared to older APIs?
Unlike traditional REST APIs that often return a fixed chunk of data, GraphQL lets the partner request only the specific data fields they need. This is super important for efficiency, especially when dealing with complex operations within TTD, like managing seat allocation for campaigns, handling budget pacing, or toggling specific features on or off for a client via the API. It reduces data load, cuts latency critical for programmatic speed. Knowing that distinction signals real technical depth.
Good detail. Okay, let's pivot now to probably the most sensitive topic in the TTD ecosystem right now, the whole supply path debate. OpenPath, SP 500+, but this seems to challenge TTD's core identity.
It's definitely a delicate balancing act for them. TTD's entire brand, their market position, is built on being the transparent, independent, objective platform for the open internet, right? The alternative to the walled
Like,
gardens.
they're Switzerland, supposedly.
Supposedly. But the recent big strategic moves on the supply side, OpenPath, which creates direct connections to publishers, bypassing some intermediaries, and SP 500 Plus SA, which is this curated whitelist of what TTD deems the top 500 plus premium publishers. Well, critics are framing these as potential self-preferencing.
Okay, unpack that. How does the self-preferencing actually happen mechanically within Kokai? And how should a potential TAM address that concern if it comes up?
The core accusation is this. Within the new Kokai environment, because Koa AI is constantly optimizing for efficiency and performance, it might implicitly favor bids going through OpenPath or SP 500 plus same way. Because those paths often have cleaner data signals, fewer hops, maybe lower hidden fees, making them look more efficient to the algorithm.
So the AI might just learn that these paths perform better, even if the user didn't explicitly choose them.
That's the concern. A client might look at their logs and see, hey, Koa seems to be steering a lot of my spend towards OpenPath, away from this other SSP I've used for years. And the fear is TTD subtly building its own slightly less walled garden by prioritizing its own curated or direct supply routes?
That definitely cuts against the objective Switzerland image. So what's TTB's official counterargument? What's the defensible position that TAM needs to articulate?
TTD's position, very consistently, is that this is all about efficiency, quality, and cleaning up the murky programmatic supply chain. They argue OpenPath cuts out unnecessary intermediaries and the associated ad tech techs, delivering more working media dollars to the publisher. They position SP 500 Plus as a necessary tool to guarantee inventory quality, fight fraud, and combat the opacity you find in the broader open exchange.
So it's framed as pro-client, pro-publisher, anti-Muda.
Exactly. And critically, they always emphasize client optionality. They stress that clients can opt out of these defaults. They can manually choose exactly which supply paths they want to use. The TAM's job is to communicate this nuance, frame OpenPath and SP 500 Plus not as self-serving, but as TTD's tools to improve the ecosystem for buyers and sellers, offering higher quality and efficiency while always respecting client choice. It's about battling the real walled gardens, Google and Meta, by offering a cleaner, open internet alternative.
Requires careful phrasing.
Okay.
Let's round out this section. Beyond Kokai and supply paths, what are the other major strategic growth engines for TTD that a candidate absolutely needs to know?
Two huge ones stand out: connected TV, CTV, and shopper marketing. CTV is by far their largest and fastest growing channel. They're reaching something like over 120 million devices now just in the US. TTD's play here isn't just selling impressions, it's about enabling high-fidelity, deterministic targeting within those premium CTV environments, justifying the higher CPMs by proving effectiveness.
Moving beyond basic demographics in TV buying.
Way beyond. And then there's shopper marketing. This is all about leveraging retail data, which is incredibly valuable because it's deterministic first-party customer data. It's future-proof against things like cookie deprecation.
Right. Connecting ad spend to actual purchases.
Precisely. TTD has struck major partnerships with big retailers, think Kroger, Walmart, and others. This allows advertisers on the TTD platform to activate that unique retail purchase data for targeting and, crucially, for closed-loop measurement. Did seeing the ad actually lead to buying the product? That's the holy grail, and retail data provides it.
And the connective tissue holding all this together, Kokai's AI, CTV targeting, shopper marketing, is their identity solution, right? UID2.
Unified ID 2.0, UID2 is absolutely non-negotiable. Every TAM candidate must understand it. TTD spearheaded UID2 as the open source collaborative answer to the death of the third-party cookie. It's a deterministic identity solution.
How does it work again, briefly?
It relies on users consenting to share their email address or phone number, which is then hashed, salted, and encrypted into a non-reversible UID2 token. This token allows for addressable advertising and measurement across the open internet without relying on cookies. The TAM needs to understand that UID2 is the fundamental plumbing that makes TTD's entire strategic vision work. It connects the AI optimization in Kokai, the precise targeting in CTV, and the powerful measurement from retail data partners, all in a privacy-conscious way for the post-cookie world.
Okay, we've built this incredible foundation, the storytelling mechanics, the deep TTD ecosystem knowledge. Now for the crucial final step, the questions you ask the interviewer. This is where you show you've done your homework, you're thinking strategically, and you're genuinely interested. Especially if you're interviewing with a senior leader, like the example we have, Andre Dennis, the Senior Director of Global TAM.
Exactly. Asking smart questions is about building rapport, but at this level, it's more than just what's a typical day like.
Hmm.
It's about showing you understand the complexity and the strategic challenges of their role, not just the one you're applying for. And given his profile, long tenure, significant internal growth, executive training, we can tailor questions that invite real strategic reflection.
Right, so let's start with acknowledging that background, that impressive journey within TTD. How do you phrase that respectfully?
You want to show you noticed his specific path. So reference his 9+ years, starting as a solutions architect and rising to senior director, global TAM. A good high-value question would be something like, I noticed your impressive tenure and significant career growth here at the trade desk, moving from solutions architect to leading the global TAM team. Given the huge shifts we've seen in programmatic over that time, identity changes, the rise of AI, CTV exploding, what stands out to you is the most significant evolution you've had to personally shepherd and integrate within the technical account management function during your time leading the team.
I like that. It acknowledges his success and asks for a strategic reflection on the role's evolution, not just the tech.
Precisely. It invites a deeper answer about leadership challenges and strategic adaptation.
And what about referencing his executive training, like the Harvard Business School certificate? How do you bring that up without sounding like you're just, name dropping?
Frame it around its applicability to the role's challenges, you could say. I also saw that you completed the Certificate in Management Essentials from HBS Executive Education. That's impressive. Did you find that particular experience especially valuable in preparing you for the unique challenges of managing a globally distributed TAM team? I'm thinking particularly about fostering that necessary balance between deep technical expertise and high-level client consultative skills across different regions.
Again, connecting it back to the demands of the job. Shows you've done detailed research and you're thinking about leadership development.
Right, it shows you recognize the investment in leadership and strategic management required at that level.
Okay, now for the strategic questions. Linking directly back to those TTD news topics and challenges we just covered in Section 4. How do you ask about Kokai adoption sensitively?
You have to approach the rollout controversy neutrally, acknowledging the public discussion without being accusatory. Don't ask, so why did the Kokai UI initially fail? That's too blunt.
Right. How should you phrase it?
Try something like this. I've been following the public discussions and TTD's response around the Kokai platform rollout, particularly some of the early client feedback regarding the initial interface complexity. From your perspective leading the global TAM team, how are you and your team working directly with clients today to ensure they have a smooth transition, really maximize the value they get from Koa AI, and fully leverage the platform's new AI-first approach?
That works. It acknowledges the issue, validates your research that you're following the news, but immediately pivots the focus to his team's solution and client enablement efforts. Very positive framing.
Exactly. It opens the door for him to talk about their strategies and successes in managing that transition.
Okay, one final killer question. Something about the ecosystem's competitive landscape, maybe touching on that open path tension we discussed.
Yes, you want a question that shows you grasp the strategic tightrope TTD is walking. Frame it around the biggest challenge or priority for the ecosystem team specifically. Maybe something like, looking at the broader ecosystem strategy, with TTD rolling out initiatives like Audience Unlimited and emphasizing direct publisher partnerships like OpenPath, what would you say is the single biggest challenge or focus area for the ecosystem TAM team right now, particularly in terms of ensuring seamless partner adoption and integration, while simultaneously reinforcing TTD's core value proposition of objectivity and independence in the bidding process.
Wow, that's a meaty question.
It is, but it's strategic. It shows you understand the inherent tension between driving adoption of potentially more profitable proprietary products like open path integrations and maintaining that crucial image as the unbiased, transparent partner for the entire open internet. It forces a strategic answer about navigating that complexity. Hashtag outro.
Well, that really brings us to the end of this incredibly dense, but hopefully incredibly useful deep dive. We feel like we've equipped you, the listener, with the absolute best structure, that's SPSIL, for crafting and delivering your key stories. We've given you 7 core TAM narratives to adapt.
And hopefully made it clear how versatile those stories can be.
Exactly. And then we layered on those critical, nuanced talking points about the current TTD ecosystem. You need to be fluent in Kokai, the role of UID2, and understand the strategic complexities and debates around things like OpenPath and SP500 Plus Day.
Remember, the TAM role at a company like the Trade Desk today, it's not just tactical troubleshooting anymore. It's really strategic consultation at the highest enterprise level. You're the bridge between incredibly complex AI, evolving identity solutions, intricate supply chain dynamics, and the client's core business goals.
You're not just managing integrations, you're actively enabling what TTD sees as the future structure of the open internet. So to leave you with one final provocative thought, something to really chew on as you prepare, and it ties everything together. The Trade Desk consistently positions itself as the transparent, objective, independent alternative to the walled gardens. That's their core mission statement, essentially.
All right.
So, given these recent discussions and, frankly, some external concerns about the potential for implicit prioritization of TD's own supply paths like OpenPath and SP500 Plus within Kokai's AI optimization logic,
You need to constantly consider this. How will the ecosystem TAM role continue to evolve to effectively communicate TTD's unwavering commitment to objectivity and client choice, while simultaneously driving the necessary adoption of its strategically important, and likely more profitable, proprietary supply-side products and partnerships?
navigating that inherent commercial and ethical tension, communicating it clearly and credibly to partners and clients, that's the absolute definition of strategic leadership for a TAM in this space today. So our advice, go structure those stories using SPSIL. Practice telling them out loud, focusing on the impact and the lessons. Internalize the TTD strategic narratives we discussed.
Walk into that interview prepared, confident, and be specific. Let all that hard work shine through.
Absolutely. Good luck with your preparation, and we'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.